Y'all, I've just moved from London to New York City. I'm so excited to be here, but I do need to find a home. Let's go see what on earth I can afford in this city. I'm so excited to be living in New York City. This is a place I have always wanted to live. It's not somewhere because of visas I thought necessarily I could live. Right now I'm filming this with a view of the Chrysler Building, which I think is just one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen. And I'm just in awe that I am here living in New York City. I'm so excited. I feel like this city has such a vibration and an energy that is unmatched. And I'm having so much fun. And together we are going to look for an apartment for me to call home. I hadn't actually been to New York City before I decided to move. I guess I just kind of thought it would be right for me. My friends told me that I would love it. There's only so many times you can hear that this is like the best city in the world without wondering, is it? So now I am here to experience it for myself, and we are going around and looking at a bunch of different apartments to find what I will call my home. And honestly, after 4 years in London, one would think maybe I would choose a city where the rent is actually cheaper, not more expensive. But it turns out I'm just really attracted to very expensive cities. And I just love to live where at least like half of my salary goes to rent. That's like my ideal scenario. So from one very expensive city to another, let's see what I can afford. I feel like a lot of people will be here to see the apartments, so we're diving straight into those. But of course, I am going to talk about tips for finding a place and applying to apartments, like especially as someone coming to the US for the first time. So if you want to see all of that, check out the timestamps and jump to that or watch it at the end. Okay, let's jump into part one and talk about everything I was looking for in an apartment. Which honestly, I'm in my new era, a new city, a new me. I'm kind of just seeing what comes my way. I'm finding myself more open and receptive, whereas in the past, I feel like I might have been a little bit more rigid about what I wanted and what I expected, which I think is the beauty of starting over in your 30s and having just like your whole life crumble around you. You kind of come out the other side and you're like, wow, why was I so rigid about what I thought I needed and wanted when it all just disappeared anyway? I think that's like the theme of this. I'm more just like a rough budget. I know what I'd like, but also I went and saw a bunch of different places. These are just the top 10 that I'm including. Not necessarily the top 10, but like a nice range. And when I say I'm flexible, I mean I'm flexible. Like I could do a studio. I could do a 1-bed, obviously, if I could afford that. I'm happy to do a 2-bed and have a roommate, a 3-bed and have 2 roommates. I kind of just wanted to see what was out there and what was on the market, to see what felt best and most right for me. I also think doing this on my own is also quite interesting because in the past, or at least in the last apartment hunting videos you all would have seen, I was taking into consideration my partner's needs as well as my own, which is like obviously the correct thing to do in a relationship. So I think this time just going purely on my own vibe and gut check was quite freeing and meant I could be really flexible. I think at the end of the day, all we've got is our own guts. So I just kind of went with mine and made sure I saw a lot of different places to get a sense of what was out there. And then when I came across the right one, I was like, yeah, this is it. Maybe the 2 main things restricting my search were how much I was willing to spend. So I wanted to pay like $2,500 US a month, give or take. Obviously, maybe a bit more if I was living on my own. Hopefully a lot less if I was living with housemates. But that was kind of like the amount that I could afford with my salary, and taking into account expenses I had back in Australia and also kind of like what I was comfortable with back in London. I was like, that is a nice round number I can work with, fortunately. And to be honest, a lot of places coming up did fall around that price. Wait, that's such a lie. I guess I was just looking for that price because honestly, there are so many places that fall well above that price. You can easily just drop money on rent here without a second thought. Yeah, I wasn't looking at those places. The second thing that was probably restricting me was my location. So I knew I wanted to live in Brooklyn. 2 reasons. I work in Brooklyn. Why would I commute from Manhattan to Brooklyn when I work here? I also really, really value being able to get to work not on the tube or the subway. I love being able to walk or cycle to work. To me, it just like makes my day. When I have to be like crammed on the subway with everyone, it does not make my day. So I really prioritize being able to easily access my work. So Brooklyn was it. And on top of that, when I told everyone how I lived in Hackney, they were like, girl, you have to live in Brooklyn. Like that's the equivalent. So it did feel much more aligned with my needs and wants and my lifestyle and the stage of life that I'm in. And don't get me wrong, the whole like, oh my God, I'm moving to New York, shouldn't I live in Manhattan situation? It definitely came to the surface quite a bit. And I did contemplate it for a while, but ultimately, like I said, for this phase of life, for this season, I kind of just knew it was going to be Brooklyn, baby. So I kind of went all in and committed to it. Plus, in the end, it turns out all the friends I've made are here in this area. And I don't know, it just feels more in line with me. And that might change in the future, don't get me wrong. Maybe she'll have a Manhattan moment eventually. But yeah, all of these apartments are gonna be in Brooklyn's, and I think like a few are in Queens as well, just because like it was on the border. Part 2, let's talk about the non-negotiables, which honestly, as I said, I'm being pretty flexible in this new era, so I actually don't have many. And because it's New York, so just like in dating, you just have to expect less. Not saying it's right, just saying it's true. You gotta expect less. That is so sad. But generally speaking, as a little human on this planet, I am trying to have like less definitive expectations and embrace more of what like presents itself to me. So we're just seeing what comes my way, and I guess I can hope and plan, but it can still not go my way. So instead, I'm just going to see what's out there, embrace it, and take it from there. So I guess when it comes to my non-negotiables, like first up at the top of the list was knowing I would have to make compromises, that very few of my non-negotiables would be met. But I think we can still go in with like, I guess a list, or in case you're watching from home or interested in knowing what I look for in an apartment, not necessarily going to get it, but what I definitely look for is the location. I would rather live in a crappy apartment in an amazing location than an amazing apartment in like a further out location. Like I said, I want to be able to walk to work. I want to be able to walk around and get a coffee and want to leave my apartment, because being outside is such an enjoyable space and vibe and energy. That is what I prioritize. In London, that was definitely the case. I lived near Victoria Park Village and it was such a village feel. There were beautiful parks. I also lived near London Fields. I always loved getting out of the house and going for a walk, and that made my day better and like my life better, but it's also what made my apartment the right apartment for me. This is a really strong non-negotiable. I'm looking for roommates where we actually get along. Like, I do not want to live with people that just feel like we are living under the same roof. I want to genuinely care about their life. I want them to care about my life. I want to watch movies with them. I want to go out with them. I want us to like get along and potentially be friends, but at the bare minimum, like enjoy each other's company and care about one another. I want it to feel more homely than individual people living under one roof. So the vibe check with the roommates is very important for me. And then these other non-negotiables are the classics, and probably I'm going to be compromising on all of them. Natural light, a dishwasher, a laundry in unit preferably, a bath because I love to soak. I love a hot warm bath. Enough room for a bed and a desk in my room. Obviously, I would bloody hope there's enough room for a bed, but also a desk so I can be making jewelry and like working from home. And then finally, like a rooftop would obviously be super cute and very New York City. A fire escape would be as well. That would be amazing. But like, that's very much nice to have. Okay, part 3. Let's get into all of the apartment tours and the prices. I feel like I just had to give you that spiel up top to help set up what type of apartments I was looking for. So now you know what I was looking for in my non-negotiables. Let's go into all 10 apartments. And like I said, there will be a 4th part to this video where I'll talk about all of the tips and applying for the apartments. So stick around to the end and watch that if that's interesting to you. So this first apartment is actually the one I was looking most forward to. I actually messaged the women living here when I was back in Australia to try and tee up seeing it. So it's in East Williamsburg. It was 3 bedrooms, so I would be living with 2 roommates, and it was $2,083 per month. It honestly lived up to like how good it looked in photos in reality. The concrete roof, the beautiful kitchen, it was genuinely spacious, had that little balcony there as well. It was really, really lovely. Like, I still think about that kitchen. There were 2 bathrooms. One was off of the bedroom of one of the other roommates, and then this one was shared between my room and the other woman. And then there was also a massive spacious closet in the hallway there as well for extra storage. And then the room, generally speaking, was a decent size with a lot of natural light. And then it also had amenities, which I have learned in the United States is a thing, buildings having amenities. So a big rooftop with sweeping views, and also like a chill out zone area where you can go and sit and hang out, I guess, as well as a gym. So amenity life is very new to me. I don't think it's like a priority for me, but very fun to learn about and discover. I would say the downside of this apartment was the location. It just wasn't that like a little bit closer that I kind of wanted and needed. And then when I walked around the streets, I wasn't like in love with the area. This next apartment is in Greenpoint. It is a 2-bed, and I would have been renting it out on my own and then finding a housemate. And it was $3,900 for the whole place. As it was 2 bedrooms, it would be around $1,950 per person. As you can see, it is brand spanking new. Honestly, I feel like my 0.5 lens is giving this too much credit. It felt small. The bedroom there, obviously, great natural light if you get that bedroom. And then in the middle there, it would have been, I guess, a bit darker. But what I cannot get around was where they put this laundry unit. Like, oh my goodness. I'll show you into the bathroom here, all very fresh, very nice, very modern. But then straight away, where you would normally probably expect to see a dining table, is just a giant washer dryer thing. It made no sense to me. This bedroom, then you get a lot more space, but even better, you get this terrace, and that terrace out there is all your own. So that was very enticing. And like, look at how big she is, and you would get that all to yourself. But I still can't get around why on earth they put the washer dryer in the middle of the hallway like that. It was just like ridiculous, and I feel like they bought the world's largest washer dryer, and that to me, like the feng shui of that in my house every day would have just like berated me so much. Next, we're going to Bushwick. This is a 1-bedroom. It was $2,925 per month, but the first month was free. So then it turns out to be around $2,681 per month, which is like, I think pretty good for a 1-bedroom, and it was rent stabilized. So that is also very, very nice. It was technically much more on the border of Queens in terms of Bushwick, so it was getting a little bit further out of Brooklyn. At the entrance was the bathroom, really decent size, and then also a really decent sized bedroom. I liked the floorboards and the big windows, lots of natural light in both rooms, which I feel is very rare in New York. And then also this balcony was quite lush as well, having your own little balcony. Not that you'd necessarily want to sit out on the street like that, but I thought it was really cute. And then a really nicely sized kitchen with a dishwasher and all the works. I think most of the places I ended up seeing had a dishwasher, which I wasn't expecting but appreciated. And then a cupboard with a boiler in it, which is obviously a bit sad because storage would be so much better. And then similar to all the other buildings, it had amenities as well. Next up, we're going back to Greenpoint, and this was another apartment that I was really looking forward to. It was much more on the higher end in terms of for a flat share. It was $2,400 to live in a 3-bed, but the room I was looking at was huge, like really decently sized. So it felt like it was kind of worth the money. Like I had my own private bathroom, which is obviously quite lush. Despite how big the bedroom was though, the living areas and the shared spaces were quite compact. So it did feel like quite a lot of money for whilst having a big room, I would still be living with housemates and have quite small shared living spaces. And these housemates, they were kind of all rolling over, so multiple rooms were getting changed out. So it was like very hectic with like lots of people coming and going and a lot of stuff all around. But I was concerned about like the amount of stuff and clutter. Washer dryer in unit though, lush, we loved that. But the best part of this entire building were the amenities, like the view from the rooftop there. Oh my days. Plus all of these lounges and barbecues. They had this whole fitness center that was really nice with like a little fake Peloton and things like that. So maybe I would be spending more in rent, but I would go down and like make myself use that gym regularly, as well as like co-working spaces. Not that I think I would want those, but then also like games rooms, which some of the housemates leaving said they've hosted a few parties down there. So a few really good positives in terms of the amenities in that building, and it definitely felt modern and nice. Sticking to Greenpoint, we are looking at a place now that is 3 bedrooms and $5,400 total. So I would have to find 2 new roommates, which would be like quite a lot, but it's only about $1,800 per person. So this place was tempting on paper, but in person it did not live up, and that's why like it's so important to see places IRL. This is also a building that I had seen sublets for. I think there's just a lot of apartments in this particular building, and I'm not gonna lie, like I'm not loving, like it felt damp and dark and not a vibe. In unit washer and dryer, modern enough kitchen, tiny living space. Loved the floorboards, very nice floorboards. And it had a fire escape, so that's like obviously pretty cool as well. But then for 3 people, that's like such a cramped space, and they were already furnished as well, so I didn't necessarily want to keep their furniture. But obviously having just moved here, that's very convenient and would have been like a really easy opportunity to just like pluck myself into and be living there. Here's one of the bedrooms. This one definitely had the best natural light, and then this one was slightly bigger, but it looked into the other apartments, so like that's not a vibe. And I think finding a roommate for those other rooms that are clearly not as good as the room I would want to take would be quite difficult. 2 small bathrooms, both decently sized. Obviously that would be very convenient living with 2 other people, make showering a lot easier. And then the other bedroom, which is significantly smaller, so once again, price wise it wouldn't be $1,800 for the room I was most interested in either. It'd probably come closer to $2,000, so it just felt like it was getting more and more complicated, and if I wasn't loving it and I was hoping to take like the better room, then it would be really difficult to fill the other rooms. It had amenities like a lot of buildings do, big rooftop, and then underground there was like this labyrinth of connected stairwells, and honestly like I feel like the source of all of the damp, where down there was then a gym and like co-working spaces and things like that, as well as outdoor areas I guess in the summertime, which would like be much nicer, but it felt, like I said, so damp. Next up is Williamsburg. This was a 3 bedroom. The room I was looking at would be $1,685, but all the girls were looking to move out, which I feel is like a low-key red flag. They assured me that it was just because like they were at different stages in their life when they were ready to move in with their partners and things like that, and they seemed really genuine and great, so I did trust that. But I was like concerned that everyone was moving out, and then in 2 months when the lease ended, I would need to find 2 more roommates, which is like a bit of a big ask. But really good price for its location. Small kitchen and dining area with no natural light, which isn't ideal. But then in the bedroom, I was looking at a lot of natural light, a tight bedroom, a bit of a squeeze, but still fit a bed and a desk. And the bathroom was super neat. And I think what I liked most was upstairs, the person in the top room. There was like this mini alcove where you went upstairs, and they had this much larger room. So potentially if I stayed, I could move up to her room when she moved out like 2 months later. So I guess that would have been my ideal scenario. But then once again, I would be upping my rent, so it wouldn't be like that more affordable price. So it's like, is the compromise of no natural light in the living room worth it when it's now getting closer to $1,900? I keep wanting to say pounds, and I'm trying hard not to. I feel like I spent so long getting pounds into my head, and now we're back to dollars. From Williamsburg, we're going to Greenpoint, and this was a 3-bed and by far the cheapest one I saw. It was also rent stabilized, so that would be, not increasing too much. It was $12.40 for the room I was looking at with 2 roommates. Really neat kitchen, really neat bathroom, also a really neat and small living space. I didn't actually get a video of it because I ended up having a yap with the girls there for so long that I forgot. Unfortunately, the living space didn't have any natural light, just like the last one. So once again, that would be a huge compromise. But then going to the room I was looking at, there was a lot of natural light in there. It had these beautiful arched windows, and I really liked how the person in there had set up their room. I thought it was a really clever use of the space because it was definitely a weird shaped room. It was very long and very thin, so I think she had done a really good job of setting that room up. It had this beautiful rooftop view over of Manhattan, and the location was really good. So those last 2, both of them were great locations, much more affordable than the more $2,000 mark I was seeing otherwise. They both had huge compromises with no natural light in the living area and living with 2 roommates. And the washer dryer was in building downstairs, not in unit. But they were very tempting for the price. And both of them were probably the best roommates I met along the way. Next, we're going to South Williamsburg. This was a 1-bedroom for $2,681, which for the size of it was definitely a good price. But yeah, you can see it has character. And I'm not sure whether that character was for me. Obviously, they were doing a lot of renos, or they were painting it and stripping it back at the moment, but you have this huge living area. Problem is, outside that window, massive neon signs for a car wash or a mechanics or something like that, which I just think would be so loud and so noisy. Then you go down this thin hallway and you have a lot of cupboards and storage. You have a bedroom, once again looking out onto a main road with a lot of neon lights. And then honestly, this bathroom, not a vibe. Could not deal with that bathroom. So as soon as I saw that, it was it's a no from me. And then this felt very Manhattan, weirdly shaped kitchen in there, but obviously super affordable for a 1-bedroom, and how much space there is, just a very, very awkward layout and full of character. Popping back to Williamsburg, this was a 3-bed, and the room I was looking at was $1,800. Super small shared living space, as you can see, very thin. You've got the couch and that's it. What I didn't mind is that the room was actually upstairs. So at the end of the hallway was the bathroom, which was very neat, very tidy, very clean. And then opposite the bathroom, you went up what was slightly sketchy stairs, and you had this little room, or this little oasis, which I didn't mind. I really liked the natural light it was getting. It was quite sizable. There was room obviously for your bed and your desk, and even a little reading nook or something like that. It was, however, very, very, very hot, so I did fear for summer. It was really trapping heat in it, but I also was tempted by the isolation of it. So for the price, $1,800, I feel you were getting your own little space away from the rest of the share house. But that said, I had to remind myself that if I was living in a share house, I wanted it to feel more communal, more community, more we cared about each other. I wasn't just rushing off to hide away in my bedroom. And I don't think the layout of the rest of the house was conducive to that, or even just the vibe of the roommates. And some of the roommates were overseas and they were trying to fill the room. It felt I was going to fall into a situation like my share house in London, which was that people are just coming and going. They're not really calling it or putting the effort in to make it a home. It felt very temporary with the other people I met there. So I don't think that one was for me. And the final apartment tour lands in Bushwick, although this was technically on the edge of Brooklyn, border of Queens. So it was out of my preferred distance, but it looked very modern, and I was curious. I know people are living in Bushwick, it's clearly a vibe out there, so I wanted to see whether it would be a vibe for me. One thing I learned through this whole process is that a lot of buildings in New York are owned by management or like one landlord, which is obviously very messed up because no one should own entire buildings. Like in Australia, individuals will own the units within a building, and so you will deal with the landlord that owns your apartment. Here, it felt like everything's managed under one thing. And so when I went to this 2-bed, I was talking to the person and he's like, oh yeah, we have a 1-bed that like literally today said they're leaving. So we're also showing that around if you want to see it. And I was like, yeah, I do. So this is our 10th, but we've got a bonus one as well, an 11th apartment tour. But I think that's also like a good tip, I guess, if you're interested in a building, to go and let the real estate know you're interested in the building. And even if a particular unit or apartment isn't currently available, maybe it will become available very quickly and they can let you know. So first up, this 2-bed was $3,787, so around $1,893 per person. As you can see in why I came, it's super modern. It's got a lot of natural light. I loved the view out of this corner window, looking out onto all of those fire escapes. Each room had a lot of natural light. I feel like with Williamsburg Greenpoint, I was compromising on natural light in the shared living spaces. Like you could only get it in a bedroom, versus here you had it all over. Huge bathroom as well, all new, all fresh, great floorboards, another big bedroom with a lot of natural light. What I didn't understand were these heater situations that they had. They took up a big chunk of floor space. It made no sense to me. It once again had amenities with a rooftop, in-building washer and dryers. And then like I said, he said that there was also a 1-bedroom about to go on market. This 1-bedroom was $2,853, which I thought for the size, like it's not a studio, you guys, it's a 1-bedroom. And seeing how these people had decked it out, you really like can maximize the space and all that natural light. I was like, this could be a really nice 1-bedroom that I would be very happy to hang out in and make my home. Big kitchen, big bathroom, very similar looking to the 2-bedroom. But obviously, yeah, I would be paying almost $1,000 more to have my own space. But if that's what I want, then maybe that's what I want. So that is all of the house tours. Stick around for my next video and you'll see which one I chose, and I'll talk a bit more about why I chose it. Now that we've gone through all of the apartments, let's do part 4, finding and applying for apartments. So how did I actually go about finding an apartment or a home in the city I've never been to before? Well, of course, I went online. When it comes to sublets and share houses, these are the different sites I used. I used Listings Project, Roomy. I found my short-term sublet through Roomy. There was one called Ohana that I had like mild success with, but not really. One called Digs. Signed up for that, didn't find anything through that. Friends of Friends, that was one that I was really hopeful for because I saw, I guess it was like quite successful in London, but I didn't have success through that. And then I also believe there's a spare room in New York City, but I didn't even think to use that. That's what I used in London, so check that out. But you know what was the most helpful one that I ended up finding a lot of these places through? Facebook. Bloody Mark, he's got us. I don't know at what point I realized I could use Facebook groups because I didn't use that in London. So anyway, at some point I was like, yes, I've got to jump on Facebook like a true boomer. And I did like a combo search of New York City apartments, sublets, or housing, and whatever else, like, you know, Williamsburg, Greenpoint, Bushwick. If you're having trouble finding particular groups, the ones that I joined were Gypsy Housing and Apartments New York City, or like NYC Sublets and Apartments, NYC Short-Term Sublets, New York City Housing, Australians in New York City if you're Australian, and obviously you can just search your country of birth. Also Young Females, NYC Apartments. Those were probably the ones I had the most success with, but there are so many. You can just like go ham, go join a bunch, see what comes through. I literally was scrolling Facebook like it was the news, and my feed just was all like these sublets and leases. And I really cannot stress how much you have to stay on top of them, because I ended up having to find someone sublet my short-term sublet, the place I was staying in previously, and being on the other end, actually posting it, the people who sent me a message within the first day, definitely within the first like hours, but within the first day, like they are who I responded to and who I locked in to come and check out the flat. And then pretty much anyone from like day 3, 4, 5 never kind of would have got a response from me because I'd already sorted it by then. So as soon as you see something, don't sleep on it, just message them, let them know what you're looking for, send a blurb about yourself. Anyone who didn't send a blurb about themselves, I could not reply to because I need to know information about you in order to match you with the roommate. And then I did a mix of FaceTimes with people before I went and actually saw them. And then some people would just like come straight away, can you do that? So I also recommend being, I guess, quite flexible to go and meet up with people. But also, we're talking about being online, so stay diligent. If anything feels strange, if communication feels off, trust your instincts, trust your gut, don't go. That said, I did speak to a lot of people, or like I said, called them beforehand and got a good sense of who they were through that. So that also helped. Also, I was talking to a girl who found her rent stabilized place, and it's like really nice, through Craigslist. And she was like born and raised in East Village, and she said Craigslist is where all the older people who have these really nice places and need someone to take over their places are listing. So maybe also check out Craigslist, but in my head, through like Broad City and other things, it's just like not something I would consider. And then for finding my own place, so not a sublet or a lease takeover, I was using Street Easy and Zillow, and pretty much like emailing the people because finding my own place by myself wasn't a top priority for me. If it was a top priority for me, I think I would have gone straight to calling a lot of people. Similar to London, once you're on the call list with people, they know to message you about things that are coming available. So just being really communicative with the real estate agents, I think, is really helpful. But I also think something's going on with brokerage and real estate agents in New York City, and I'm not across it, but yeah, maybe look into that a bit more if that's what you're primarily looking for. And then in terms of applying, there are some necessary documents you will need. A social security number, you'll need to make 40 times the monthly rent per year. You'll need a credit score, 3 months of bank statements, 3 pay stubs, 2 forms of ID, a landlord reference letter, a letter of employment, your tax returns, and an overview of your savings. These are all the general documents you might be asked for. A lot of the times you're going to be asked for all of them, but those are like the ones to kind of like really get together. And as much as I watched these types of videos, I still didn't do any of this because I didn't have a social security number. I was absolutely sleeping on that. I think I got to week 4 and I was like, oh, you don't just like give it to me. And then in terms of a credit score, that was a really annoying one. Turns out this credit score thing here is like a thing, which is so annoying. Like, why? I know you want me to be in credit and loan and debt for the rest of my life, but why does that have to be associated with me finding home? I did not have a credit score. A friend sent me one called Experian.com where you can maybe get like an international credit score if the banks you were using are internationally recognized. But I was on like UK digital neobank situation, so I didn't have that. I did not qualify, and without a credit score, annoyingly, I had to have a guarantor, which was super frustrating. It just feels like a loophole that you cannot get around. I've even met people who have lived in the UK for the US for a really long time, and they still were asked to like give a guarantor. So there's 2 options there. Your guarantor has to be obviously in the States, so you have to know someone within the States, and they have to like earn a certain amount and be a good guarantor. Or there's a bunch of websites. If you search like guarantors US, there are a bunch of websites that will be your guarantor, annoyingly at a cost, which is your full month of rent, which is just so frustrating. I couldn't believe like giving a full month of rent to someone for that. Luckily, very kindly, my dad's cousin who lives in the US was my guarantor. So that took a hot minute to organize, but I'm really grateful and fortunate for that. And that really helped expedite the process and make it run a little bit more smoothly because yeah, without a guarantor, I was not going to get my flat, to be honest. So the guarantor covered the credit score. The social security number, you want to sign up for that as soon as you land and go and get it because you will need that. That is like your biometric data that will like link everything here. And then everything else in terms of like bank statements, pay stubs, ID, I was able to use a mix of my UK bank statements and my employment reference saying that I was moving from the UK company to the US company. So the rest of that I was able to provide without too much stress. So that was my process for finding and applying for apartments. I did land one. I am very happy to be calling my new place home. I am incredibly grateful for the people who helped make it happen. Like, honestly, it was quite stressful, and being so new, I can understand why. I think a lot of people moving here for the first time have maybe like a 3 or 4 month sublet so that they can build their credit score, and so then when they apply for places they have a lot smoother transition. Equally, I've also spoken to people who, you know, they just knew the landlord, or the landlord was a bit more chill, and like, you know, management wasn't super strict, and they were able to just like get through. So I do think it is like case by case basis. But this is the end of the video. Thank you so much for being here, for watching. Happy apartment hunting, and I'll see you next time to show you which home is going to be mine.